With Little House, I used one of the principles that we used in Vampire Diaries, which was like, what do you hang your story on every episode? And we used to sort of have an event that would link all the characters and draw them into a space where they could interact. And so that is how we thought of Little House as well. What is the episode about? What's the event that draws everybody together in a particular episode, but is also part of a larger story, a part of a larger serialized story.
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm Brian Gary. In our latest episode, Josephine Green Zhang talks with showrunner and screenwriter Rebecca Sonnenshine about crafting the new Little House on the Prairie series, staying true to Laura Ingalls Wilder's beloved novels, the art of adaptation, managing fans' expectations, and much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcasting app of choice. And watch full episodes on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. And now, here's Josephine in conversation with Rebecca.
My name is Josephine Green Zhang. This is WGA Third and Fairfax. Today we have the lovely, stellar writer and showrunner, Rebecca Sonnenshine, who is just coming out with the Netflix's highly anticipated Little House on the Prairie. And, we also know Rebecca for writing Lionsgate's incredible The Housemaid, and she's about to come out with, she's also currently writing The Housemaid's Secret, which will also be directed by Paul Feig. Rebecca has also served as a showrunner for Archive 81, and earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Writing for Amazon's The Boys. And additional TV credits include The Vampire Diaries, Outcast, and The Crossing. I also remember, there's others, but I do remember you co-writing American Zombie.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep,
That's true. That was a good one.
Yep. So, Rebecca, so excited to have you on the podcast and, hear about your illustrious career in the various genres that you've jumped from. But I want to first start off with, your origin story. Where are you from and what inspired you to write?
Well, it's really nice to be here. It's nice to see you, Josephine. I I was born in Northern California in a little town called Oroville, and I actually been talking a lot about I read Little House on the Prairie when I was really young, like 5 years old, and I was obsessed with the books, but they also sort of made me want to be a writer and a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of have this origin story. All guys have the origin story of, I read Superman. It was amazing. I wanted to be a writer. But for me, it was Little House on the Prairie. And so I really wanted to make a version of Little House on the Prairie. And that sort of set me on my path of writing and actually going to film school or being a filmmaker eventually. That's sort of this book series I read when I was just a kid. And it was so cinematic and evocative that I had this idea that I could make an adaptation of this book when I was 10. so so I was like, well, I better go to film school and I better, study filmmaking and screenwriting and all those things. So sort of set me on a path very young of what I wanted to do. And I just sort of stuck to it. I never had a backup plan, basically. So I didn't have a fallback job or a fallback career. I just hoped it would work out.
Well, it has, and we're so excited to have now that dream come true. Little House on the Prairie, is here. It's coming out into the world, and what was it as a little? It's funny because I feel like my book was Anne of Green Gables too, and my relation to Little House on the Prairies was catching the reruns of the show and loving loving that and just finding this wholesome family that just brought you comfort, even if it felt like, a world apart from the one that we live in. And so, how did Little House on the Prairie, you hold on to this dream from when you were 10, to making it? Like, how did the project come about, and like what kept the flame going for you with this project?
Well, it's, fairly late in my career now, so I definitely have been through a lot. I sort of drifted into genre work, because I do love that too. It's a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
contradiction, I guess, for people. I've done primarily genre work, so horror and superheroes, sci-fi, dark stuff. And this is always something I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do, but I really do love all those sort of darker, you know, things out there. So I really loved, making all the shows that I have and working on all the shows that I have and using sort of the emotional complexity of those characters to sort of maybe set them apart from just like it's just genre. You just kind of think of it as a little bit of an opportunity to tell darker stories or more emotionally resonant stories with high stakes. So I guess I always had, I don't know if I ever thought I would actually make it to do this project, but it's all about world building and being immersive. I think that's what genre is. And so for me, what links all these things, all these different projects that sort of seem maybe a little disparate, is this idea that you can tell them visually. Like I love the opportunity to tell stories visually, and the opportunity to sort of world build and create this space for an audience to sort of come very close to a story that either is an alternate reality or is a time very far in the past. Sort of step through this window and sort of immerse yourself in a world of these characters.
Can you talk a little bit about structuring like this new adaptation of Little House, and what was your journey
Yeah.
into the story?
Yeah. Yeah, structuring it is, it's always an interesting, adaptations are an interesting process. You're trying to capture the essence of the material, whatever it may be. You're trying to capture a few things. One is the feeling you have when you read it, which is kind of a little bit intangible. And the other thing is to sort of stay true to the essence of what's there on the page and the story that um, whatever it is, that podcast, that book, that graphic novel tells. And it's really a process of taking the material and thinking about all of the moments that sort of flash at you when you're just thinking about it. It's sort of like a, not as so much as like underlining things you want to do, but when you think about it, what are the things that pop into your head? What are the pictures that pop into your head, and knowing that those are very important signposts, and then trying to see what is the arc of the material. Where does it start? Where does it end? The people in it, what is their arc? Where does one character start? What do they want? Do they get that by the end? And then it's sort of a process of like in a project like Little House, it's not plot heavy. There's a lot of details. There's a chapter about building a door, so there's not a lot of stuff that drives it necessarily. So you're kind of taking all those things in the book and all those like incidents and moments and little sort of episodic events that they go through and trying to think of a larger narrative. And then thinking like, well, who do we need to include from this book? Who do we draw out from this book? Like some people, there's some characters that have a single moment in the book that you see an opportunity for to create a much larger story. And then you just sort of start weaving all of these things together. I come from broadcast television. I come from Vampire Diaries. which was very plot heavy. It was we burned through a lot of story, but we had a way of structuring that sort of holds true for everything I've worked on since. There's a way to structure with things that don't necessarily have a super clear engine, meaning you don't have, you're not solving crimes. You've got a group of people, maybe have an objective, but then what drives your stories, you're kind of creating that as you go along. And with Little House, I used one of the principles that we used in Vampire Diaries, which was like, what do you hang your story on every episode? And we used to sort of have an event that would link all the characters and draw them into a space where they could interact. And so that is how we thought of Little House as well. What is the episode about? What's the event that draws everybody together in a particular episode, but is also part of a larger story, a part of a larger serialized story.
I mean, it's so beautifully told. It's gorgeous. Like, the show is absolutely stunning. And it is such a wonderful modern, like, retake of the books, as well as, like, we have the show. When you were developing it, did you look to the show a lot, or were you very separate from that and really went back to the books?
Yeah, I did not look at the show. We don't own the show. So it's actually, I'm supposed to stay away from the show. I'm not actually adapting the show at all. The only places we overlap in that we're adapting the same material.
Oh.
So I did not look at the show. I went back to the books, and then I went to, there's certain movies that I love that I felt like were very important visual touchstones to a show like this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was really just about taking the book and finding the through line, finding the structure, finding the story of an entire season that we're trying to tell, and then going from there. So it's very much just an adaptation of the books.
Oh, I see. I love how it's structurally, like, you're on this epic adventure of traveling, and it made me even think of, like, I don't know, like that video game. Oh no, it's like that computer game that we play, like, Pioneer.
Yeah.
You know,
Oregon Trail.
Oregon
Yeah.
Trail, yes, Oregon Trail, and you're like, they're gonna get dysentery, and, like, yeah, I think that so much of the stakes, even though it feels very slice of life, is very, like, for them being pioneers, it is life or death, and I think that
Yeah.
you guys do such a beautiful job of finding those moments, to make us really, um, to really put us in their shoes, and how, epic that is, and get to see into our own history of, like, how scary it was. And you do such a great job of also, like, including stories, histories that we didn't, we don't, that we want to gloss over, like including a Native American storyline, and making those characters so rich, and really making the family, you know, uh, acknowledge and be a part of that, and have all these, like, clashes among the cultures. I'm just curious. What were any of the creative challenges of, like, adapting this beloved property, or managing fans' expectations, and crafting something new? Like, why do you think now is the time for Little House on the Prairie?
I think a lot of people kind of got a taste of what they imagined the 19th century was like during the pandemic. There's sort of an isolation, there's sort of a slowing down of time. It really felt like to mitigate this disease, we had to stay away from each other. That's very 19th century. We were like isolated. So I think there was some of that, just sort of like people, and then people kind of not knowing what to do with themselves, and think people sort of fleeing to the countryside and making sourdough bread, and sort of examining things they could do around their house, And so I think some people kind of got into the mindset of that sort of what was it like back then? So there's sort of that element that everybody was kind of the pandemic really kind of brought this sort of thing to everybody's mind.
Mm.
But there was also, I've always wanted to do this adaptation. So for me it's been sort of a constant, like I would love to do this. But there's also an opportunity now in television where we can explore stories that in the past didn't get a chance. Being able to explore this story from an Osage perspective is just not something that people were doing in the past, and working with Native actors and exploring a culture in a more sort of detailed way. That is something that people are interested in now, and we have the chance to look at this story from many sides instead of just from one perspective. And that perspective has been told many, many times, right? The settlers, the pioneers, um, the settling of America, but kind of opening it up to Black settlers and indigenous peoples living on the land that were already there. Just getting a chance to tell those stories alongside the Ingalls, which I think are actually kind of, they're there in the book. They're there. They're just not the main story. So it's an amazing opportunity to sort of look at, how did we get here? Like, the books are very much about the myth of America. How how did they lure people into the West? They had this really grand notion of, well, there was manifest destiny, but also it was almost more personal, like this American exceptionalism idea of American exceptionalism and freedom. And you can be a real man if you go improve yourself, and luring people with a promise of a paradise or an Eden, that this life was something that they could have that was better than the one they already had. So that is I truly believe that uh, myth making, it persists today. That's kind of who we are, and it's because we tell these stories to ourselves and about ourselves, that who are Americans. You'll get, like, we love freedom, we love to explore, we're pioneers. Those all started long ago, and they're like a story we tell over and over about ourselves. So I just thought it's a very interesting time to be sort of looking at all that. But at the same time, it is really a story. It's not a story about, it's not an ideas story. It's not a big, grand, heady, intellectual thing. It's really about a family. It's about community. It's about faith. It's about a young woman making her way in the world, trying to decide who she is and who she wants to be. And by extension, the entire family. It's sort of a coming of age story about the entire family and figuring out who they want to be.
I mean, it sounds like so much went back to the books, but also that did it require a lot of research to like know that time period more, and like what ways did you fill in the gaps that may have like, what fun did you have in your research process?
Yeah, I've read every book about Laura Ingalls Wilder. I've read all the biographies. I've read her Pioneer Girl, which is the first book she attempted, before she kind of moved into fiction. I read about the Osage. I read about Black Americans in the West. I read about women in the West. I read about Reconstruction and the shadow of the Civil War. And so the research was pretty broad, just trying to get a real sense of the era. I think one thing that's really interesting is this, it was right after the Civil War. So to kind of, it doesn't touch on that very much in the book, but I think, having our country having gone through so many, wars since that time, um, war leaves a lot of marks, and it's kind of interesting to go back and take a look at what that must have been like, and how it affected everyone, and how it, you know it kind of got into people's emotional spaces and how they were trying to move on from it or how they were unable to move on from it. That was interesting to me.
Yeah, I think you did such an like everyone did such an amazing job of creating a father figure. I could see that in the way that the father figure who, um, you know, if as you watch it, you'll learn that he did not participate in the war and like what that means to be seen as a head of a family and be man enough. You know, I put that in air quotes,
You're
but
right.
like and you know that's a beautiful storyline about what PTSD may have been like back then.
Yeah.
So it's very like you guys do such a great job of including so many themes without ever. It never feels heavy-handed. It's all like a natural, organic part of the whole, like the family's experience. Uh, can you talk a little bit about pitching this project, or how did you prepare for it? But just that kind of the development
Just all that pitching. I mean, at this point, we all have our own, way of pitching. We sort of have a template that we all use, or we all probably have, we've created our own personal pitching template.
process.
It's weird because we never really see other people pitch, but
Yeah.
so a lot of it is about, finding your finding your connection or explaining your connection to the material
Mm-hmm.
and why you are perfectly suited to tell it. I felt like, my background was, I always found these books very close to me instead of being exotic. Many people read them and they felt like I've never experienced anything like that. I'm a city kid or I'm a suburbs kid. I kind of grew up in a rural area. I come from families that were farmers. My parents were very much like ma and pa. My mother was a teacher. She used to sew all my clothes. She loved to bake. She was kind of an artisan, she's an artist and she loved to create things. And so was my father. He was a carpenter and a mechanic and an inventor. And so he loved to sort of explore every side of himself. And I always felt, oh, I'm very lucky to have this interesting, weird childhood where we're raising chickens and growing our food and my father's inventing solar powered water systems and all these crazy things. So I had that going for me, but I also had such a deep connection to the material that I'd been thinking about it for so long. And I guess you try to convey that. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to write things that I don't feel strongly about. I'm really not ever looking to just do something because I'm like, well, maybe I could wrap my head around that. Kind of have to like click in and have a really strong connection to it. So for me, pitching was partly about that and then partly about creating a scenario in which you'd want to tell this in 2026. And that was, well, how do you tell the Osage story in this story? Like, how do you bring that out? What is that? And so did a lot of research and worked with the story consultant. Um, but I knew, even before I worked with the story consultant, I knew that what you wanted to do was create a parallel family to the Ingalls that would be going through some of the same things that they were, and that would sort of be a bridge between these two worlds. So I did sort of come up with that idea and then refined it as I worked with a consultant, an Osage consultant. And then a lot of it was about creating these characters or really fleshing out or kind of crystallizing who these characters were in a slightly more modern context, meaning, Ma in the books is a little bit of a follower. She kind of does what her husband asks, and I didn't want to create a character like that. I wanted to create a character that had a little more it was a great love story. It was always a great love story. That was very clear from the books. But I wanted Caroline to be her own person. And so a lot of it was about that. And I wanted Mary to be her own person, not just the rival to her sister. I didn't want her to just be sort of the person who is the pretty perfect sister. I wanted to give her more. So a lot of it was just sort of rounding out these characters and then finding all the other characters that we wanted to include that would be in a setting like this. I think the book really does not have much, it doesn't have anything to do with the town of Independence. I think part of that was Laura Ingalls Wilder writing to convey the idea you could always do it alone, which is the opposite of what I'm saying in the book, because it wasn't true. That wasn't a whole truth. And they didn't live 40 miles from town, and they didn't do everything on their own. And that's okay. That's being a human. Like, community is everything. That is how people made it out there. And I feel like that idea is really an interesting one to explore. We are living in a society that's kind of a little bit fragmented. We spend a lot of our time online, alone, and it's kind of this moment where you have to think, is this a direction that we should be heading in, or should we really look to community and getting out there and spending time with people and being present and being in the moment and taking a look around at what you have instead of what you want to buy.
And I love the vision that you have for this series without giving away where it all ends. But I do love that we, even in the pilot episode, we get to see you traverse to Independence, and so there's a little bit of a knowing the whole. I really don't want to spoil it.
I feel like people will have watched it by now, and also it really follows the book. It does. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not, if you read the book when you're a kid, you'll kind of
Yeah.
remember, oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful thing about it, is getting those wholesome kernels that are there that remind you, but also updating it, like, with the mother's character and things that, that we want to see nowadays and also reflect the society that we live in. But I guess in terms of like structuring it seasonally, like, oh, they're on this adventure this first season, and where they're heading into season 2 and 3, like, where do you it's following the book, like, but you chose, you guys all developed it to be structured in that way per season. So I'm just curious, like, was that part of your pitch process, or did you kind of discover that in the room? Oh, very cool.
I think my biggest thing was, like, unlike the original series, I wanted to follow the books, meaning I wanted them to move around. They move around a lot. The Ingalls were nomadic. They were kind of always starting over. It kind of shows their resilience quite well.
Yeah.
But it also was exciting to read as a kid, like going to a new place. And so when I pitched it, I said, this is not set in a single town, that you'll just have these characters, interacting with each other for the whole time, for the whole run of the show. We're going to be moving around. It's really important. That's the vision of the show. And I still have to keep pitching that vision because it's a lot to keep building these worlds, but it's essential. It's essential to the story. And so while we've made some changes, like the girls are older in Little House on the Prairie than they were in the books. By this time we get to the third season, they'll be exactly the right age. So I'm not worried. They're going to be exactly where they're supposed to be in 2 seasons by the end of the second season. So that to me was an opportunity to tell slightly more complicated stories and have actors who are more skilled. Like, every year on a kid adds skill and complexity to their performance. And so being able to write like that, those stories, and see it through Laura's eyes as a person who's really wrestling with things, really wrestling with identity and what's good and right in this world, and a sense of justice, and a sense that her parents may not be flawless. All those things kind of require a slightly older young adult. She's 10 in Little House on the Prairie in our series, and it's such an incredible age of kids sort of realizing, like, I love my parents, but someday I'm going to have to go out in the world and be an adult. That's a crazy thing to sort of be grappling with. So that's a choice that we made, but it's all in service of this larger idea of sort of honoring the books and how they moved around, and how their life kept sort of the rug kept being pulled out from under them, and they had to scramble and make it work again. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I feel like it's something that is gives us a lot of hope, and it kind of enforces this idea that this love story about a family, that family is everything and hope is everything. And as long as you sort of use those as your touchstones, that you can meet all these crazy challenges and defeats with grace and an optimism for the future.
Mm. And it's just such a smart series and way to organize the different seasons and build the story, because I'm just so excited to see like the next season and how they establish themselves and build this community. And like we're always invited into a new world. Like it comes back to world building, like you were saying. And
Yeah.
so congrats on the second season. I can't wait to see
Thanks.
it.
Thank you. We're in it. We're in it right now.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I just want to, because we didn't talk too much about the housemaid, but I did want to ask,
Oh,
like, like, how has it been switching between genres? And like, just the general question as a writer, I'm like, how do you multitask? Like, how do you multitask from all this and your pacing and just like, yes, I want to know, like, how do you juggle it? Juggle it.
I think it's interesting, you just kind of make the space for things. But they're both adaptations of really well loved material. So in
Mhm.
some ways they have a lot in common, in the sense that you're trying to, even when you make changes to the material, you're trying to be true to it. So you're not twisting it into something that it's not. You're just finding a more cinematic way to tell the story for the screen. So in that sense, they both kind of fed off each other, in the sense that, how do you decide what's important, and how do you decide what you can change? And is it being true to the spirit of the book? So working on them kind of simultaneously. I've been working on Little House for quite a while, so it's been an on and off process for quite some time. And the housemaid kind of came up in between, sometimes that I was, down on Little House. And I think for me, switching between genres is, yes, it's easy. Because I don't think of things as so different, because everything's rooted in sort of these emotional stakes of characters, and every story is a world that you build, even if it's something like The Housemaid, which is more familiar, it's modern day, but you still have to create a world. And so that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm creating a world, um, and staying true to characters, and they kind of tell you what the structure is going to be. Like the characters, the way they move, the way they think, what they want, they are they set your path, really. So yeah, I'm working on this Southman's Secret right now. They're going into production pretty soon. So just sort of like, it's like kind of the final sort of passes at, like, the essentials for the story, the visual components, the structure, and all those things. And they're a great group of people, and I love working with all of them, Paul, Vegan, everybody, on that production is like, they're so thoughtful and fun to work with. And I also try to create that here on Little House, where people are fun and they care a lot, and that everybody's sort of heard and respected.
It's important too. It sometimes it can feel rare, but like the thing is, sometimes I feel like we have to like always choose to do what, like choose the values we want, and it's like, especially
Sure.
like if we want things to be better, like we make those, for ourselves. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I just a little bit of rapid fire to conclude our a wonderful interview. Questions. Okay, what's your favorite film? You could, or what's your favorite film right now?
Well, I will tell you, like, the film that I think about a lot right now, because we've everything in Little House on the Prairie season 1 and 2, as it turns out, is kind of drawing inspiration from Days of Heaven, Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven. It's such a beautiful film. It's like a masterpiece. Every frame is a piece of art, and it is unusual, and it is visual, and it is emotional, and a lot happens in it. And it's just such a unique movie that I saw when I was young, and in a crappy print, was scratched up. And over time, it's been restored. You're seeing restored 4K versions, even projected, and it's so much more beautiful than you could ever have imagined when you were watching this, like, um, art house second run, you know, print of something. And it's so vivid and so beautiful. It really serves as an inspiration for this series.
Is there a favorite TV show that you have? Could be now, could be the past, going on now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What am I right now? I would say my favorite show was Pluribus, which is a show that also uses a lot of visual language to tell its story. There, I love that there's like whole swaths of the show that don't have any dialogue, and that it is also a show about what is humanity, what is the purpose of humanity, what constitutes being human in this world. It's a really beautiful big idea show, but it's so feels so emotionally present and relatable, and that's rare. That's hard for a sci-fi project to do, is to really draw you in. It's just like you feel like you're there. It's talk about world building. It's an incredible show.
I the access, the like incredible places that they
Yeah.
capture. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot like this show, like Little House, just the incredible like country and spaces that you guys contain. It's gorgeous. I can see the Terrence Malick influence now. Now that you say
Yeah.
it, I get, yeah.
It's very talented, Terrence Malick. It's true.
Very, very. Oh, what's your like writing routine? What's your writing like? How do you get into it? Like what's a day like Rebecca Sonnenshine's writing day?
Wow. Well, it's funny because I used to be, when you're writing at home alone, I'm like a daytime writer. I'm not like a morning person. I'm not like a late night person. I just like to write during the day. And I just kind of write. Usually, I have a page count that I'm trying to hit. But once you're into sort of this mode, you're just writing whenever you get a chance. A lot of times on weekends, all day on weekends, and I definitely just sit down and go. And I actually really like to write. Some people don't love to write, even though they're writers, they like to have written. But I enjoy the process of writing very much. And I have my own process, which kind of involves this way of, obviously, break down a story into an outline. But then I do this thing called scene sketching, which is like before I commit to my final draft, I have a Word document where I sort of like, I would call it improving, where you just kind of like sketch the scene and sketch the dialogue and then sometimes rearrange it, see how it's working. And then kind of it's like, okay, now I have a map for the scene that I'm writing, and then I go. I don't usually start with a blank page.
Rebecca, I'm totally stealing that. That is so genius. I love that. No, thank you for sharing that golden nugget. I I feel like I could talk to you forever. I know you got to go to a show back too. I'm actually stealing this one from my last one. I'm stealing this from script notes. If either you could say Little House on the Prairie. I know it's on Netflix, but let's imagine it has a popcorn bucket. and then also, you know, the Housemaid series. What would their popcorn buckets be?
Oh my gosh, the popcorn buckets. Well, that's a good question. I mean, probably Little House on the Prairie would be a little covered wagon. You know, you put, it's like a little basket of popcorn that you can go in through the keyhole, which is the back of the wagon, and take your popcorn out. But it also might be a well, because we did a well sequence in season 1, which is famous from the books, and that was um, sort of a very complex process that we went through to do that. We built a well on a stage, and so I think that would be also a fun popcorn bucket for Little House, either a well or a covered wagon. And for, gosh, for Housemaid, um, I there's like a whole running joke from the first movie about sandwiches, and she's really wants a sandwich at the end, you know, like I need a fucking sandwich. So I think I would just have the bucket of popcorn be like a thing of Wonder Bread, like rolled down into like a bucket shape.
Oh my god.
That's what
I
I
would
would
never
do.
I would never have guessed it. I was gonna like, oh, a knife. Oh, I don't know what like
No, it's a sandwich bag.
yeah, I like that. I like the covered wagon.
That's how
Like
my mind works. That's
well,
how my
I
mind
was
works.
already
I'm
like I was already like the popcorn bucket with the I was like, oh, how you would unfold, you know, like the wagon cover, you know.
yeah,
And or the
yeah,
well you could store money in it afterwards, like post
totally.
put little coins, make a wish.
Yeah,
Very
exactly. Very useful. You could
very
also gather berries in it. You could do lots of things with these popcorn buckets. I would definitely reuse them. I'm a big reuser of things. So it could be a vase, could be anything.
Thank you so much.
So,
Um,
so many things.
so many things. Rebecca, this has been so lovely. I don't know. I have to like admit that we met some years ago. And Rebecca was my mentee through Film Independent. And I found this like old email that it's hard so I just wanted to like it was so sweet what you said. You gave me some great tricks. You and some of it you like confirmed. So you said tricks you use, have a page count, you know, even if it's
Yeah.
just 2 pages, music,
Yep.
you make a soundtrack for the film. 3,
Yeah.
stop in the middle of a scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
4, imagine the trailer for your film. And 5, deadlines. Does this all still hold
Yeah.
up?
Totally. It all totally. I definitely create a playlist for everything I do. And that has no words, just like soundtracks or classical, that I can immediately get into it. And the thing about stopping in the middle of a scene, which is always great, is like you don't have to face the blank page. So like you'll come back and finish up your scene and then launch right into the next thing. So you're like, oh, I got to get back to that scene, instead of like, oh, I got to start start a new scene. It just kind of gives you like a little like running jump.
No, I love. It's like we're fixated to want to finish unfinished tasks, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a wonderful trick, and these all hold up, as do you, Rebecca. You hold up 100%. This was such a wonderful time to get to talk to you. And I love the show.
Yeah.
So can't wait for season 2 of, I'd say season 2 of Little House, and, sequel 2 of Housemaid.
Season 2 of The Housemaid.
Season 2 of The
Yeah.
Housemaid.
Season 2. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. Follow Third and Fairfax on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcasting app of choice. Or subscribe to Writers Guild of America West on YouTube to never miss an episode about pitching tips, industry advice, and behind-the-scenes stories from your favorite writers of your favorite films and TV shows. If you like this episode or have a comment, email us at podcast@wga.org. Also check out Written By, the Guild's online publication for more on writer craft, career, and the union life. And as always, I'm Brian Gary. Thanks for listening.